Thank you so much for joining us online today. We so appreciate you checking out this message. We hope you enjoy it and are inspired to live more and more like Jesus Christ by His grace. If you would like to support the ministries of Rancho, you can do so at rancho.tv/giving. Set up a giving profile and a reoccurring gift. We'd sure appreciate that. Enjoy.
All right, well, we are just celebrating a great Easter last week. This place was just full of life and lots of fun. And thanks for being here. And I met some of you who showed up for the first time last week and got a chance to meet you again this week. We're so happy you're a part of things. And it is a fun day out there. It is, weather's okay. It's overcast. It's nice, but lots of food, lots of fun afterwards. Look forward to seeing you out there as well. But just a great Easter that was focused on resurrection story. Resurrection story is tough seasons have some kind of hope, some resurrection ahead. And we're keeping that theme going through this spring series called Rise Again. But before we do that, I want to show you a little clip that is related, that has something to do with our topic today, that went absolutely viral. I think most of the world has seen this clip of the San Diego safari elephants responding to an earthquake. So take a look at this adorable video.
Days ago, we had a 5.2 magnitude earthquake in Julian, very close to the safari park. Our African savanna elephants did what they do best. In the wild, if the youngsters are confronted with a hyena or a lion possibly, the adults do what's called an alert circle. So now you see the adults alert circling with the youngsters that come in the middle. So we have little sweet girl, Micaiah, who's 7, in the middle. And what's interesting, Zuli, who's also 7, he's a youngster, same age, but look at him. He's actually acting like an adult to protect the other sibling there. Yeah, that was amazing. So
Big Brother was like,
same age, but protecting little sis, which I thought was amazing.
All right, isn't that cute? Round of applause for elephants. I mean, wow, that was pretty adorable. Earthquake happens. Most of them, if not all of them, haven't experienced that, but the instinct, kind of sets in. They run to each other, protect each other. They do what a lot of mammals do, and that's strength in numbers. We get together, gather around, and we protect those who are young or those who are weak. One of the greatest parts of that was the brother, it's a sister and brother, both 7 years old. The brother says, I'm gonna be an adult, this is my time to step up. And you can see one of the parents, mom or dad, taking the trunk and like, no, you get in the center. He's like, no, I'm going to the outside, I'm a big boy now. And just a lot of fun to see that happen because species have learned instinctually, God's design, whatever you wanna call it, that when we coordinate and gather, the stronger we are. And we get to see that at the San Diego Zoo, a lot of fun. Now, humans might be a little slower than the elephants. It took us a long time to figure that out. 200,000 years of human existence before we realized, we need to gather a little more than we are. Because ancient human beings gathered in small clans, small families. And those small clans and small families scattered all over the earth had to do everything. That clan had to do all the hunting, all the gathering, all the home building, all the protecting, all of it in little tiny pockets. And after, 200,000 years of fighting and killing and migrating, somebody had the idea, I'd like to meet that person, why don't we create a civilization? Why don't we get all these clans together into larger groups and let's start civilization through urban centers. And so just 6,000 years ago, humans finally started clustering in bigger gatherings, bigger herds that have become urban centers, cities, and civilization began. And so we don't all have to do the hunting and gathering and building and protecting. We can have specialists. You guys do the farming. You guys do the hunting. You guys do the building and construction. And all these little pockets of specialties, and then we can trade between cities. Civilization started. And so we began to protect each other and defend each other, not in little small clan huddles, but in bigger clans that eventually became city-states and then eventually became nations and boundaries and armies and communities and wonderful institutions that we know and love. That's the story of humankind. And we might think, well, that's all great, and it is great. Lots of benefits, incredible benefits when we herd together in large civilizations and nations. But there's a downside to this. There's a downside to clustering. And we could see that in the elephants as well. Did the elephants say, hey, what about the giraffes? Somebody go and protect the giraffes. They didn't care about the giraffes. They just cared about themselves. Those were African elephants, and they didn't say, hey, somebody mobilize to protect the Asian elephants. They didn't care about the Asian elephants. We're African elephants. We're going to protect African elephants. And then when they gather together in what has affectionately been known as a butt circle, get all the butts together and face out, they are waving their heads and waving their trunks. I did a little research on that. That is adrenaline kicked into their brains, and it says everything is a threat. We're scanning, everything is a threat. And so if a zookeeper happened to be, feeding time, that zookeeper's dead. Everything is a threat. You see where I'm going? We are wired to protect us. Everyone else is a them. And when we feel threatened and when there's danger, everything else becomes the enemy, and we are wired to fight. And so, yeah, we can say this is a good thing, and it's super adorable, right? But there's a downside to this as well. There's a downside that says when it's us versus them, this is not the best we can be. And so today we're going to talk about rising from a nation in turmoil. Rise again from a nation in turmoil. That's the topic of the day, and this is very relevant in the story of the United States of America. We are in some degree of turmoil, and some of us might say we are in extreme turmoil. Others of you say, well, we might not be in such turmoil, but we're in the process here, so everybody would have a different opinion on how much turmoil the United States of America is in, but we are in some turmoil. And we can look to the Bible, which we'll today, both Old Testament and New Testament. We will see a vision of how a nation in turmoil can rise again. Now, I've heard from various corners of American civilization that this is the most divided we have ever been as a country. 100% untrue. Objectively, historically, not true by a mile, right? You might have heard we had a civil war, an actual war, weapons, sides, bloodshed, 620,000 Americans dead, by far the most bloodshed of any war we have ever participated in was a civil war against ourselves. And then there was the Gilded Age. I had to do a little looking into this. This was a time of extreme political fighting. Newspapers were a thing, print was a thing, and it was just absolutely demolishing each other with words that later became political violence in America. And then post-World War II, we were a mess as a country. We had helped to achieve incredible success on the global stage and to help win World War II and defeat enemies. But then we looked at each other and we were not good with each other. There was the Cold War, and so we were all in this heightened state of threat, right? So we were the elephants that are shaking our heads, always looking at threats. There were still the vestiges of Jim Crow and racial injustice and violence, political violence, assassinations. I mean, this was a gnarly time in American history, far worse than it is today. And some of you here, and I talked to some people early, lived through that, and they told their own stories about this very difficult age. The turmoil we're in now, which is real, does not compare to previous eras of turmoil in the United States of America. Not to minimize the turmoil we're in right now, but it is not that big of a deal quite yet. We have, in our country, a very toxic political climate. You add to that COVID and all the anxiety of COVID and all the division of COVID. You add to that technology, social media, AI, and there is a stress level and a threat level that's pretty high in us. And the way this works in political circles is you've got politicians who are saying more outlandish things, using what's been called, I think they're called devil terms, where you accuse people in the other political party of absolutely horrendous things, and I won't get into any examples, but you know what they are. You accuse the opposing political party of terrible, terrible things. Whether they're true or not, you just say it. And the more outlandish things you say with these devil terms, the more money pours into your political party. And because you get rewarded for saying those outlandish terms by more money pouring in, you keep saying them and saying them and saying them. And so this pendulum of political divide is turning into an extreme rhetoric that hasn't yet poured out in extreme regular violence, but there are signs that are concerning. So while this is not the worst time of division in our country's history by a long shot, there are warning signs that I think we should pay attention to. And we can look to the Bible, which is written in the context of a nation in extreme turmoil, extreme perpetual turmoil, and we can say, okay, God, what did you say in the Bible to the nation of Israel that was in extreme perpetual turmoil. And what can we learn today? So I brought my paper Bible, and I'm going to run through the Old Testament real quick. And some of you say, well, then do I not have to read it? No, you should read it. But it's quite a read. It's long. It's very dramatic. It's about a nation of Israel trying to find itself, trying to build itself, trying to discover kind of their God, who their God is, and what their God might want, and how to maybe appease their God to win wars and expand boundaries. It's a very, very cool read. We believe inspired by the Holy Spirit to learn some lessons. It's about a nation in perpetual turmoil. And so early in Genesis, in fact, Genesis 1 through 11 is the origin stories of creation and the fall of humankind and God's grace that gets inserted when we sin. His grace is immediate. And then you have the flood, Noah's flood, and the Tower of Babel. Some people believe that is kind of origin mythology inspired by the Spirit. Some people will think it's more historical. That's up to you. Then we have Genesis 12 through 22 that details the story of the origin family. This is Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and all that surrounds those patriarchs. And then Genesis 23 through 50 talks about the origin tragedy of this family that is breaking apart and committing terrible violence against each other and dividing, and then famine hits and they go to Egypt to get some provision. And that started well, but then it goes south and Egypt enslaves Israel. One of the first civilizations, Egypt, that we talked about, ended up enslaving Israel. And then you have the origin hero rises, this is Moses, and says to Egypt, let my people go, and the 10 plagues that frees Israel into the wilderness to wander for 40 years. They have no king, queen, they have no governors, no ruling authorities, so God gifts them with the law. First 5 books of the Bible, God says, this is how you're gonna order yourself. And so the 10 commandments and all the commandments of the first 5 books of the Bible is their law and order, so they survive the wilderness and they survive building their nation. And then there's Joshua, the origin conquest. They cross the river Jordan and they conquer the land of Canaan, modern day Israel. It is horrifically violent and bloody. A lot of questions about what's God's voice and not in that situation, but you can read about that in the Bible. And then you have the period of a united kingdom. All 12 tribes of Israel are united as a nation now. They've taken the land, their borders are pretty solid. They have had judges. These judges are wise rulers establishing an ordered nation, but then they say, we want a king. God says, fine, you want a king like any earthly king? Here they are, with all their flaws, with all their faults. Here's Saul, David, and Solomon. You could read about that mainly in 1 and 2 Samuel. And then, because they're human kings, they have human problems. They are corrupt. They are fighting about Jerusalem. They're fighting about the temple. They're fighting about how to order their nations. And 2 sons of Solomon, they are fighting and divide the kingdom, 10 tribes in the north, 2 tribes in the south. That divided kingdom has 38 flawed kings, 1 flawed queen. 8 of those kings, you could argue, were good-ish, but largely corrupt governments that are not serving the people in the north well, the 10 tribes, or the people in the south well, the 2 tribes. You can read about that in 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles. And then you have the period of desolation. The tribes in the north are dysfunctional. The tribes in the north are internally decaying. They're not honoring God's heart. They're ripping themselves apart. They're pursuing all kinds of stuff that is destructive to them, destructive to others, and they weaken, and Assyria comes in and wipes out the 10 tribes of the north. A couple hundred-ish years later, the 2 tribes remaining in the south, same thing, internal decay, not following the heart of God. They are weakening, and here comes Babylon. The empire from the east swallows them up, takes them into exile, destroys the city, destroys the temple. And then the Old Testament comes to an end. It's a tragedy. The Old Testament reads like a tragedy. It's a nation in perpetual turmoil. 83% of Israel destroyed in the Old Testament. The 17% that remains is subjugated to Babylon. Their culture is diffused. Their people are in exile, distributed all over the world. And in this all, there's a vague hope that there is hope ahead. There's vague hope that there is resurrection ahead for the nation of Israel. That's all in the Old Testament. In the 1400 years of the Old Testament national history, It's a country in significant turmoil. War, division, injustice, oppression, invasions, being conquered and conquering, enslaved and free and exiled. The Old Testament is a very dramatic read, mostly tragic, about a nation in turmoil. Here's an example in Hosea 13 of the despair that the nation of Israel experienced over and over again. The Word of God says, "You will disappear like the morning mist, Israel. Like dew in the morning sun, like chaff blown by the wind, like smoke from a chimney. You will be attacked like a lion, like a leopard that lurks along the road, like a bear whose cubs have been taken away, tearing out your heart, devoured like a hungry lioness, mangling you like a wild animal. You're about to be destroyed, O Israel." And those warnings are constant in the Old Testament, constant. And they're graphic warnings. Destruction is coming. The turmoil of your nation will result in destruction. And so the question is, well, why were they in turmoil? What were they doing wrong? And again, in the Old Testament, there's many lists about what they were doing wrong. One of those lists is in Ezekiel 22. Every leader in Israel who lives within your walls is bent on murder. Fathers and mothers are treated with contempt. Foreigners are forced to pay for protection. Orphans and widows are wronged and oppressed among you. People accuse others falsely and send them to their death. You are filled with idol worshipers and people who do detestable things. That's one of dozens of lists calling out Israel and their internal corruption and decay. I'm going to put that list on a slide behind us, and you could ask yourself the question, does the United States look anything like the failures of Israel? I'm just going to leave this to you to make these connections, however strong or weak they might be. Corrupt, self-serving leaders, a culture of violence, a devaluation of family, the rich neglect the poor, foreigners are mistreated, the marginalized forgotten, people lying about each other, people falsely accusing each other, sexual abuse of women. That's the list of how Israel is internally corrupt and decaying and separate from the heart of God. As a result, the nation of Israel crumbled. As a result, the nation of Israel was weak and attacked and destroyed by Assyria, attacked and taken into exile by Babylon. And so none of us believe that the United States of America is in that same level of turmoil as Israel was in the Old Testament. But there are connections that can be made that at the very least should cause us to ask some questions about our own country. Yes, our country is amazing. There's arguments that it's among the best country, if not that has ever lived in terms of freedom and prosperity and opportunity. This melting pot of this invitation, people all over the world can come and be cared for and have opportunity, right? This is the ideal of America. That's the ideal of America. It's on the Statue of Liberty. It is part of our history from the very beginning. So much good can come out of that idyllic vision, and yet it goes sideways so often. And here's a list of what we know about America's turmoil right now. Not as bad as it was during the time of Israel in the Old Testament, not as bad as it even has been in American history, but there's things we've got to pay attention to. There is increasing political division. A lot of it, which is kind of newish, is fueled by religion tying themselves to political parties. Not a good idea. The strength of our democracy is in some question. Increasing racial division, fears of an economic pullback. Our standing in the world is in flux. We're engaged in multiple global wars, not with direct fire, but we're engaged. We are buried in crushing debt fueled by materialism, both on a national level and a family level. And we have a culture of grievance and blame. The American culture is a culture of grievance and blame. Woe is me. Oh my gosh, what about me? How can I get more, right? These other people are a threat to me, right? It's a culture of grievance and blame. America needs a resurrection. Our level of turmoil is not as horrific as it's been. It's not as terrible as it was in Israel in the Old Testament, but there are warning signs to take seriously. So how can America, or any nation in turmoil, experience a resurrection? How can a nation in turmoil rise again? Well, we're going to look briefly at at an Old Testament prophet, and then we're gonna look at some teachings of Jesus to answer the question, how can we respond to a nation in turmoil? Let's look at the minor prophets. There are 12 minor prophets in the Old Testament. I think it's offensive that they're called minor. When I get to heaven, I'm gonna pull them aside and say, hey, you're major in my heart, and I know that'll make them feel great. The reason why they're called minor is because they were prophets during the time of the division, right? So the nation is divided, some minor prophets in the south, some minor prophets in the north. The minor prophet we're gonna look at briefly is Micah. Micah was a prophet in the north, and he was a wonderful voice of God to the 10 tribes in the north, trying desperately to say to these 10 tribes in the north, change your ways, turn this thing around, because if you don't turn this thing around, Assyria from the north is gonna wipe you out. They will devastate you. And so Micah gives this sermon or series of sermons to the 10 tribes of the north. And I'm gonna show you one verse from Micah 6, verse 8. It's actually a very famous verse that is trying to focus the nation of Israel on the heart of God, because what the nation is trying to do is say, hey, we know we're doomed. We know we're in turmoil. We know we are internally decaying. We know we are weak. The prophets have called out our problems. We know Assyria is about to devastate us. And so God, what do you want? Do you want my sacrifices? And this is what they're asking in Micah chapter 6. Do you want us to go to the temple or do you want us to go to a place of worship? And do you want us to give a sacrifice of grain? Do you want us to give a sacrifice of blood? They were actually saying to each other, God, do you want us to sacrifice our own children, to kill our own children on an altar of worship to get your attention and to show how desperate we are? And God says, no, I do not want any of that. I don't want any of it. Micah 6:8, know, O people. The Lord has told you what is good, and this is what he requires: to do what is right, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. That's the answer to the question. What does it take for a nation in turmoil to rise again? This is the answer. And it does not have to do with political parties. The hope of any nation in turmoil, including the hope of our own nation, is not in political parties. I mean, please, political parties are, I would say, my humble opinion, the majority of the problem. So to say our political party system creates the divisions, is chasing after the money of this division, fuels the divisions, fuels the turmoils, does that mean that political party that caused it is gonna rescue us? Heck no. No way. And Jesus made that clear, and we'll see that in a minute, that it is not about any political human government or authority that's gonna save us. They're the problem. For a nation to rise again, it's not about a political party's success. For a nation to rise again, it's not about military power or flexing muscle. Believe me, empires have risen by flexing muscle and they fall. For a nation to rise again, it's not about appeasing God with sacrifice. And I've heard this a million times. I grew up with this. If we're just faithful to God and do our religious things and believe without doubt and go to church and read the Bible and pray, then God will bring us national blessing. That's just not at all the plan. And God says so in Micah 6. But what he does want, and he makes it really clear, I love the simplicity of this language. Here's what I want, here's what I require, and lays out three things. Do what's right. Do what's right. It's simple, just be a decent human being. You don't need to rally political parties or rely on them. You don't need to rally armies. You don't need to appease God through religious whatever. It's just be a decent person. Do what is right, Micah 6:8. Be kind, care for your neighbor. Be selfless, look out for others. Not just your other Asian elephants or the African elephants, the giraffes. Look after everybody, right? Do what's right. Love mercy. And I love this. Love mercy. It doesn't just say be merciful. It says love mercy. Now, being merciful is great. There's a need that comes to our attention, and we have a lot of needs come to our attention as a church and through our rescue mission, Mission Hope, and we highlight specific needs. And it's okay to say, hey, here's a need, And then the church always kind of rallies to meet that need. That's doing mercy. What does Micah 6:8 say? Love mercy. Love mercy, which means to have in your heart, I can't wait to help a person who might need a little bit of my time. I can't wait to help a person who might need a little bit of my friendship. I can't wait to help a person who might need a little bit of resourcing, right? I can't wait. I love it. Let there be an opportunity to show mercy. Let me find somebody who needs a little bit of help. And let me do my part. Love mercy. And then walk humbly. Micah 6:8, do what's right, love mercy, walk humbly. And I would say this is opinion, right? Take it or leave it. But I think humility is the lowest trait in American culture. I think we are the most arrogant nation on earth. And some might say, heck yeah, we're the most arrogant. You know, we're powerful and we got the armies and look at us, we're Americans, heck yeah. And I love America. I mean, I'm like a flag-waving American. I love this country. I love everything this country has afforded me and my family and the freedoms and prosperity and all that. I love it, love it, love it, but we are arrogant. We're best, we're great, we're number one. And it's not just the politicians saying that, it's us who carry this kind of arrogance. And what that does, whether we know it or not, whether we're conscious of it or not, is we look down on others. We look down on other people, we look down on other cultures. Instead of learning from other cultures, we dismiss other cultures. Not for me, whatever. There's an arrogance. And God says, listen, for any nation in turmoil, be a decent person, do what's right, love mercy, helping other people, and then walk humbly. Learn to be humble. Instead of judging other people immediately, whether they're a different political party, different religion, different opinions, different cultures, let's learn, let's grow. We've got so much to learn from so many people. Let's never think we're always right. We believe the right things. We have all the right opinions. We know what's up and nobody else does. That is corrupting this country. And we've got to learn, not just from Micah the prophet, but let's learn from Jesus. You want to know what Jesus said about a nation rising again from turmoil? You want to know what Jesus said about a nation succeeding and a nation prospering? You know what Jesus says about nations succeeding and prospering? Do you know what he said? 0, because he doesn't care about it. Thank you for laughing. He doesn't care about nations prospering. I mean, he was born a Jew in the nation of Israel, and he loved Israel. Never once in the 3.5 years of Jesus' teaching to say, hey, listen, Israel, I know we've had some challenges, nation of turmoil. This is how we turn this nation around. This is how we make our nation prosperous. This is how we make our nation, once again, strong in our armies and take board. He didn't talk about it because he didn't care about it. And that's the nation of Israel that he was born in. Loved the people. Had almost, if any, no interest, terrible sentence structure, almost no interest in his nation succeeding. He loved the people. He wanted them to succeed. He wanted the marginalized to succeed. I mean, he wanted everybody to succeed. And then he went to Samaria and wanted the Samaritans to succeed. And then says to all of his followers, it's about all tribes, all tongues, all nations living in a whole new kingdom. Not in the mighty kingdom of Israel, but in the humble kingdom of heaven. And believe me, and this might become a meme clip here, but if Jesus didn't care so much about the nationalism of Israel, he definitely didn't care about the nationalism of America. Just doesn't care. Cares about Americans, cares about you, cares about me, the same as he cares about everybody else on earth, the same as he cares about Israel. We're all human beings, beautifully made in the image of God. God is not in heaven hoping America is prosperous and powerful. He's just not. Nor is he hoping Israel's prosperous or powerful or any nation, because that's just not the deal. Now, we can care about that, totally our freedom to care about that. And absolutely, care about your country. I care about our country. If you care about a political party, care about your political party. I do not care about my political party at all. But if you want to care about a political party, great. If you want to care about candidates, great. I encourage you. Participate, vote, all the stuff, all the responsibilities of being an American. Be proud of your country. Wave the flag, great. I do the same thing. But the ministry of Jesus and the heart of God, according to Micah and according to Jesus, isn't about nationalism, any one country, any borders. Jesus, as you know, was arrested by fierce nationalists, right? He was arrested by the nationalistic powers of Rome and the nationalistic powers of Israel. He was arrested, and at his trial with Pontius Pilate, Jesus says, "My kingdom is not an earthly kingdom." How simple is that? Jesus did not put his stock in any earthly kingdom, not Israel, not the United States, nothing. My kingdom is different. If I had an earthly kingdom, I would fight. I'd raise up an army, and we'd do what every nation does. Gather people, create borders, raise armies, and fight. Jesus says that's not happening in the kingdom of heaven. But my kingdom is not of this world. Not of this world. And so while we can be deeply concerned and deeply invested in our nation's well-being, in our national security, all that is good, that is not the hope of heaven. The hope of heaven is the kingdom of heaven, led by the values that Jesus taught us, and led by this incredible, beautiful prayer of Jesus in Matthew 6:10. May your kingdom come soon. May your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And then Jesus taught in the Sermon on the Mount, what does that look like? It looks like caring for each other and walking the extra mile and turning the other cheek and giving generously and being devoted to our family. These are the values that are aligned with the kingdom of heaven. Jesus says, if we do that, the kingdom of heaven will rise. As Jesus was being murdered by the kingdoms of this earth, he is installing the kingdom of heaven of love and selflessness and kindness and mercy and compassion and looking out for each other. Not just the African elephants looking after the African elephants, but the giraffes and the Asian elephants and the meerkats, because they're super cool. It's like we look out for everybody. Do what's right, love mercy, and walk humbly. The same message through Micah to the nation of Israel that was about to be destroyed is the same message through Jesus to all nations, including us. So we're not relying on the hope of America being the next political party or the next candidate. The hope of America and any nation in turmoil, get this, is us. Us. Learning from Jesus and following the example of Jesus. God, would you help me to do the right thing, to be a person of character, not trying to get away with stuff or manipulate systems or to get mine, but help me to be a person of character, of kindness, of grace, of compassion. Help me to love mercy, to just eagerly find somebody who might have a need and do what I can to meet that need. And let me walk humbly. No arrogance that I've got all the answers and believe all the right things and shouldn't everybody listen to my way and my opinions and my politics, but to walk humbly and to say, I am here to learn from other people, all people. And that's the kingdom of heaven that will rise, and as Jesus prayed, will one day push out the kingdoms of this world, where one day we may not need political parties, and one day we may not need mighty armies because we have learned the simple message of Jesus to love one another. That day, pretty well sure, is not going to be in my lifetime. But what we can do is make steps in that direction. The kingdom of heaven on earth. That's the beauty of the invitation of Jesus. We're going to close in a song that Evan insists we close with, and I agree. So it's a song called Keep Hope Alive. And you can see in this song that there is this tension between where I'm at now and where we want to be. And in the context of a nation that's in turmoil, it's just saying, hey, yes, these days might be tough, but there's light ahead and there's hope ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And something that we see all throughout the Old Testament. I like the Old Testament.
You're like a scholar.
Yeah, I do. I'm appreciative. So something we see is that you have Israel that's in a lot of trouble, and then there's a prophet that's raised up, and then that prophet kind of gets them out of the trouble, and then that prophet dies, and then they get back into trouble, and then a new prophet, and it keeps going over and over and over again. until Jesus. And when we see Jesus, when he comes and he reveals the true nature and the true heart of God, no longer are we under that burden anymore. And now we're able to live in freedom and always have that hope. He always keeps hope alive in our life.
Totally agree. And let's stand and enjoy the song together. If you know it, feel free to sing it out. It's a good one.
Days may be darkest, but your light is greater. You light our way, God, you light our way. When evil is rising, you're rising higher with power to save, with power to save. You keep hope alive. You keep hope alive from the beginning to end. Your word never fails. You keep hope alive because you are alive. Jesus, you are alive. Death had a stronghold, but your life was stronger. Rose from the grave, rose up from the grave. Oh, when evil is rising, you're rising higher with power to save, with power to save. Oh, you keep hope alive. You keep hope alive from the beginning to end. Your word never fails. You keep hope alive because you are alive. Jesus, you are alive. There's hope in the morning, hope in the evening, hope because you're living, hope because you're breathing. There's hope in the breaking, hope in the sorrow, hope for this moment, my hope for tomorrow. There's hope in the morning, there's hope in the evening, there's hope because you're living, oh, because you're breathing. There's hope in the breaking, oh, in the sorrow. My hope for tomorrow. You keep hope alive. You keep hope alive from the beginning to end. Your word never fails. You keep hope alive because you are alive. Jesus, you are alive. You keep hope alive. You keep hope alive. Your word, you keep hope alive because you are alive. You are alive. Keep hope alive. You keep hope alive from the beginning to end. Your word never fails. You keep hope alive because you are alive. Jesus, you are alive.
That's a great song to end with this vision of hope that regardless of what our nation is going through and what you're feeling about our nation, the hope ahead is that we follow the heart of God. And on a personal level and on a family level, we do our part and we say, let's just be good people. Let's love mercy and let's walk humbly and just watch what God does through us. It's been a great pleasure to be here with you. We are about to celebrate Sunday Fun Day, raising some money for our youth group out there. If you have a cornhole tournament, let me just apologize in advance for the desolation you're about to experience. And there's hot dogs out there, food. Feel free to hang around. Look forward to seeing you next week as well. God bless.